Hey, assalamu alaikum. So today I am going to be talking about managing debt as a Muslim. Now, debt is something we want to sort of try and avoid getting into, and especially we want to try and avoid getting into interest. And also I want to talk about in this video what impact having debt has to someone, and just from what my experience really. And I hope people can find that useful. So for those that are new here, welcome to Simple Muslim Money, which is all about simple halal investing and personal finance for Muslims. Just a quick disclaimer, everything I say here is for entertainment and information purposes. It is not investment advice. Okay, with that said, let's get into debt as a Muslim. Now, one of the things that we want to do is avoid interest, because as a Muslim, that's something we want to kind of avoid doing that. And, you know, interest is something that can spiral for many reasons. So one, it could be like things like a credit card. You spend money on a credit card, and if you just pay the minimum payments, then that credit card debt will just increase because of interest. So as well as like something we want to avoid as Muslims, it's also a very good thing to kind of not get mixed up into, because what happens is there's this thing where you end up, once you have that debt, especially on something like a credit card, you get interest on top of interest. So whatever interest you owe, especially if you just pay the minimum amounts, and it can just kind of really spin out of control, and very quickly, by the way, especially when it comes to a credit card or something like that. So definitely avoiding debt is something that, you know, I believe in, and definitely something I've read a lot about. And because what it does is it puts you on the defense with your money. You're not kind of actually using your money to build more wealth. What it's actually doing is that it's kind of putting you into like a worse position, and it's not enabling you to kind of grow your money. Now, one of the ways that debt can build up is definitely living beyond your means. So one thing is very common, like people buy like a really expensive car, and then that has a lot of repayments to do. And then, you know, when you do buy a car, it's something you kind of keep for a very long time. So, you know, it can not be sort of ideal, especially like it's so easy. You're going to car dealership, they make it look all really nice, and you know, you buy the car, that's one thing, but then all the different options, the paint, the electric like windows, like cars have like blind spot assist, they have like so many like gadgets and stuff, electric seats as well. Like electric seats are, and once you get used to it, you just kind of like expect it. It's very hard to go back to the manual seats as well. But definitely, you know, that can be very big, especially living in a house that's beyond your means. I know Dave Ramsey, who's like a famous personal finance sort of person, he talks about, you know, your house rent, whatever, mortgage, whatever it is, shouldn't, you know, exceed 25% or something, or 28% of your kind of income. So just to give you a bit of advice, obviously everyone's situation is different, but if you've got very high house payments and rent payments, then, you know, that can make things very difficult. If someone loses their job as well, I mean, that's happened to me before, although, you know, fortunately I did get like, you know, a good redundancy package, but however, it can be very terrible, like periods going through that and kind of figuring all that out, and being made redundant or losing your job, or, you know, having to leave your job for whatever reason is not very nice at all. And as I said before, debt just goes out of control. You know, you can end up easily kind of buying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things, and then, you know, you've got this debt, and then you can't necessarily pay back that debt, and then what happens is the debt ends up increasing because you end up owning interest as well. And then if you don't, the longer you take to pay that off, you then kind of get interest on interest. So that's one of the things I definitely want to highlight as a big lesson for me, is how these credit cards and stuff like that work. It's just interest upon interest. Back in the probably 2000s, I would say, it's very famous for people to be getting like store cards. Any store you went to, they were trying to sell you a store card, and it's very easy just to get into debt and things like that. Like we have a shop here called Next. When you buy stuff, like we're trying to buy something, we just ended up like creating a Next account. So whenever we bought something, it would come out of this account, and we had to remember to kind of pay it back. They don't kind of tell you to set up a direct debit or anything like that. So, you know, you could be very careful to kind of not get into debt. And also, again, things like that can affect your credit score as well. So yeah, got to be very sort of careful about that sort of things. And I was reading and listening about sort of what rich people do, and there's a really good podcast, highly recommend it for people, by Ramit Sethi, who's like another famous kind of personal finance person. His one's really cool. He has like couples on there, and they talk about money issues and things like that. And he was talking about how, you know, rich people don't spend beyond their means. So, you know, and that's how they manage to keep most of the money. And also another thing rich people do is they know where their money's going as well. And they're not going to use money to get into debt for something like a holiday or something that's like a really big car, or, you know, buying stuff that, you know, like a really fancy I don't know, a piece of technology or something, if they don't have the money for that, they're not going to go into debt. So, it's definitely a lesson that, I've picked up and something I want to kind of continue doing. And culture has changed now. There is this kind of consumer culture. It's very easy just to go to Amazon or wherever it is and just quickly buy something without even thinking about it. And, that's something that, I definitely need to be more wary of. I've got a Monzo bank account at the moment. And what's really good about that is it kind of breaks all my spending down. I can see where money's going, how much I'm spending on Amazon, how much I'm spending on other shops as well, like grocery shopping as well. It's just kind of being aware of all of this sort of stuff and, making sure I have the money to buy stuff. Very easy to just spend money on clothes and things like that. And, it's just this very, I want it now culture. There's also something that I've noticed a lot is this buy now, pay later sort of options now. So it makes it very tempting to, I'll just buy it now and I'll just pay it in installments. So things like Klarna, I think PayPal offer it. I think there's another one I forgot that was created by one of the founders of PayPal. So there's all of these ways. It's very easy to get into debt, and and once you do get into a bit of a hole with debt, can be very kind of difficult to get out of it. But I do want to stress that, everyone's situation is different. For some people, they just can't help it. They haven't got the cash to do what they'd like to do. And, it's unfortunately, they're having to get into a bit of debt because, they just need to tie things over. So I do definitely appreciate that. It's very easy for me to just say, don't get into debt and things like that because, unfortunately, I'm in a good position where I've been able to kind of clear most of my debt and things like that. And another thing is definitely big expenses as well. So as I mentioned earlier, things like, spending money beyond your means, but the big expenses, those are the ones that I would say where some debt is probably understandable. Even then, you would try to avoid it where you can. So things like your property, if you do need a car as well, I know, not everyone has, spare cash just to go out and just buy a car in one lump sum. Ideally, if people could do that, that'd be great. But, that's not necessarily the case. And, car can be quite important, especially I've got a family, I've got kids, and having a car is just like massive. It just makes such a big difference and to quality of life. But definitely not buying a car that's too crazy as well, and also with a house as well. So most people do have some sort of debt on the house or mortgage or what have you. And I know Islamic mortgages as well. That's a very common question among people. I'm hoping to have kind of just talk about that a bit in a future episode. So probably having debt on big items like that probably makes sense, but having debt on certain other things, so probably not having debt on if you've got a big wedding or if you're going on a big holiday. I don't think that can have a big impact on your finances because just having debt on things like that, you could probably save up for would be better because, they massive expenses. And for me as well, it's something when I got married, I didn't want to get into debt. And I just kind of tried to make sure I had enough money, or we had enough money, me and the wife, to, pay the wedding was really important. And just kind of not going beyond our means because, once you get into that debt, it can be quite hard to get out. And, I've fortunately been able to clear debt. And what I'm able to do now is invest quite a bit of my money, my income. So I invest at least around about 20%, and most of it is for me, but also invest money for the kids as well. So that's been really good, and it means that I'm able to go on the offense for my money. I'm not on defense because I don't have all these big debts that I have to pay off. It's not that I've never been in debt. I have been in debt before, but fortunately, alhamdulillah, I was able to kind of pay that off. Another thing I do want to say is when you do be able to sort of clear your debt, is that it feels good when you do clear debt. No matter how much you do, just clearing it, making it small, keeping it track, it feels amazing. You can relax. I feel very fortunate that I'm in this position, and inshallah, it'll kind of continue like that. But also, another thing, I have heard about is building the habit of not going into debt. There was this Thera body massage gun I wanted, but it was quite a tight month, and I invested some money already, and I was like, what, let me hold off and maybe buy that at another point. And then what I found was a bit later, actually I'm all right without it. I got a few alternatives in terms of how to do things, so I kind of just left it. So just building the habit of not going to debt, I believe, is very important. And the ways to kind of deal with it, firstly, just sort of face up to it. If there is some debt, face up to it, find out how much it is. And oh gosh, that would just make such a good relief. And I think for me, just knowing where my money is or how much debt and things like that, just facing up to that reality is massively important. Even if I didn't have a plan to necessarily deal with the debt I had before, but just knowing what it was, how much it was, just made it a lot less sort of scary. And there is a couple of sort of famous methods out there in terms of dealing with debt. One that is out there is called the SNOWBALL method, where you deal with the smallest debt that you have first, clear it out of the way, and it's good like that. The other one is the AVALANCHE method, where you deal with the debt that has the most interest. So you deal with that one first, and you're kind of dealing with that debt and just kind of clearing things out that way. Good thing about the SNOWBALL method, where you're kind of dealing with your small amount of debt first, is that it's a good psychological mind trick. You just feel better just by, at least you've cleared one debt, and just mentally it's just easier to understand. And okay, I've cleared one debt, now I've just got a few more things to do. Whereas with the AVALANCHE, you can kind of do a few more calculations and things like that, and it might not feel like you're actually kind of clearing your debt that much, whereas in actual fact you are. But probably the final thing I want to leave with is just simplicity, trying to keep things as simple as possible. Trying to keep your debt as simple as possible, trying to manage it in the most simple way. If you have a really complicated way, try and keep things on autopilot and stuff like that. Trying to keep it, just trying to have your debt, like some people consolidate debt into one company, and you do definitely have to be careful with that, but definitely find what works for you. Even if you just have to put a small amount in there regularly for now, at least you're kind of contributing it to it, and you could kind of spend a bit of time working out a plan. But definitely clearing out a debt feels amazing, and inshallah, I hope everyone it works out good for them. So if you've enjoyed this episode, then inshallah I really appreciate that. I'll continue to make some more. And if you can smash that like button if you're on YouTube, or if you're watching on your audio podcast, please like and follow. Assalamu alaikum. Bye.